Alright, hey guys. Been reading through Deuteronomy and up to chapter 29. I read through several chapters over the last couple days, and not really a whole lot stood out. Don't get me wrong, you may want to read through it. There may be things that you can kind of pull out of there that maybe God is speaking to you about, but something in particular had spoken to me in chapter 29. And in verse 4, it's talking about, or in the previous chapters, we just read, verses 2 through 4. It says, "And Moses called unto Israel, and said unto them, Ye have seen all that the Lord did before your eyes in the land of Egypt unto Pharaoh, and unto all his servants, and unto all his land. The great temptations which thine eyes have seen, the signs and those great miracles. Yet the Lord hath not given you a heart to perceive, and eyes to see, and ears to hear unto this day." So I want you to see here that it's God that's actually opening the hearts, the eyes, and the ears of the individuals, even though the works had been done, and that they had physically seen these things. They weren't able to actually bring it from here to here until God had opened their eyes to see and to hear and to perceive it. So, this actually ties into New Testament doctrine as well. I know it's somewhat controversial, but that it's God that actually calls us out. It's God that gives us eyes to see and ears to hear, and that if you are having eyes to see and ears to hear, it's not because you were somehow more intellectually gifted than that next guy down the hall who's just rebelliously ignoring the truth, and you've got the truth. It's really a matter of the fact that God opened your eyes to see it, thus you see it. And this really kind of gives us a certain amount of humility, because if we do see and perceive these things, and we do feel drawn to God, and we have that relationship, it gives us a sense of compassion for those who are not yet at that point, as opposed to a sense of self-righteousness that, well, I was open-minded and I came to the truth, but these other people didn't. So think about it from that perspective. But then something else that stood out to me was in verse 19. It says, "And it came to pass when he heareth the words," and it's talking about, we back up a little bit to verse 18. It says, "Lest there," verse 16. "For ye know how we have dwelt in the land of Egypt, and how we came through the nations which ye passed by. And ye have seen their abominations and their idols, wood and stone, silver and gold, which were among them. Lest there should be among you a man or a woman or family or tribe whose heart turneth away this day from the Lord our God, to see and to serve the gods of these nations. Lest there should be among you a root that beareth gall and wormwood." So he's telling them here to put away all these false idols and false practices that these other nations that they've witnessed have done. And he's saying, put away, don't have any part of it. And he tells them in verse 19, "And it came to pass, when he heareth the words of this curse, that he bless himself in his heart, saying, I shall have peace, though I walk in the imagination of mine heart, to add drunkenness to thirst." So he tells them here that basically, the reason we want to do this is because the temptation is there, and that it come to pass that they hear the words of this thing and they violate the covenant, and that this individual says in his heart, and this is important, this individual says in his heart, saying, "I shall have peace, even though I walk in the imagination of my own heart." And he's talking about the fact that it's really continued on in Hebrews 10, talking about how we basically depart from the truth, but yet we sit there and constantly reassure ourselves, and yeah, I'm good, even though I'm walking in a manner that is completely ungodly and I know is wrong. That God tells him here, yeah, that's not going to happen. And he tells him in verse 20, the Lord will not spare him, but then the anger of the Lord and his jealousy shall smoke against the man, and all the curses that are written in this book shall lie upon him, and the Lord shall blot his name out from under heaven. So it's pretty stark warning there, and tells him straight up, look, you came to the knowledge of the truth, you were there, but yet you started drifting back into kind of your old practices, drifting back into Egypt, so to speak, and it tells them in verse 25, then men shall say, because they have forsaken the covenant of the Lord their God, and the God of their fathers, which have been made with them when he brought them out forth from the land of Egypt. He's telling them, that you were given these covenants, and he brought you forth out of the land of Egypt, and because you're departing and going back, in verse 20, he's going to blot their name out from under heaven. He's going to basically, if you violate the covenant, then all bets are off. And this ties into Hebrews 10:39, where he says, but we are not of them. Let me back up to 38. It says, now the just shall live by faith, but if any man draw back, my soul shall have no pleasure in him. But we are not of them that draw back unto perdition, but of them that believe to the saving of the soul. And he's talking about basically keep on keeping on. You know what you were given, regardless of your feelings, regardless of your emotions, regardless of the trials, though we get knocked down. And just had a Bible study with some friends the other day, and we were talking about the fact that, some of the great men of the Bible, Hebrews 11 is the chapter of faith, where it talks about all these guys, these Hall of Fame guys, Abraham and all these who are really identified as having faith, yet each one of these guys fell repeatedly. Abraham tried to sell his wife twice, so to speak, to save himself. Pass her off as his sister. So that's not exactly a model of faith, but his faith, even though he failed from time to time, he kept on keeping on. He continued pressing on to God, and that's something that we're told to do, and in Hebrews 10 we're told to do as well. Meaning we are not those who draw back, who fall away. We are not those, we will fall, but we are not those who stay down. We continue keeping on, and we continue pressing in no matter what. Like Peter said, when Jesus asked him, where are you going to go? And Peter's like, where am I going to go? You're the one who has the words of truth. There's nowhere else for me to go. So even though Peter himself continued to fall, he repeatedly put his foot in his mouth in front of Jesus, had continuous errors even after, where he refused to sit down with Gentiles, even after a statement in the book of Acts where he said it was okay. He continued to stumble. He continued to make mistakes and stuff, but he continued pressing in all the way into the end. So that's something that we're called to do. Like Paul said, I have finished the race. So we just keep running and we keep pressing in. All right? You guys, God bless.